Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It is another edition of hashtag Malkin Live. And I want to thank everyone who's joining me here on YouTube and Facebook. A couple of housekeeping items. If you haven't downloaded the Telegram app, and if you aren't following me, something I've been urging you to do now for a year, do it. This is my whip cracking you to do it. I am on Gab, but I hardly ever use it. Parler's still not back up, and I wasn't using it that much anyway. But there's just a lot of good content that I'm sharing on Telegram from other people who have also been pushed off other platforms. And I want to make sure that you read my latest column, which you can find at uns.com and other places. And I know for my Facebook followers, you can't share any uns content, but you can also find the column, which is on this beautiful 3-year-old girl, Victoria Tory Rose Smith, who was allegedly murdered at the hands of Black Lives Matter promoting nuts who hated white people, but ended up being able to adopt 3 white children, one of them who is now dead. I've been writing similar stories for 25, 30 years now, and it's just part of a pattern. And as long as you accept the toxic and deadly myth of white privilege, there are going to be more victims like beautiful little Tory Smith. So there's so much to talk about, and I want to bring in my guest right away. It's Nick Fuentes, the host of America Live. Hey, Nick, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you.
Yeah, so I wanted to start out with a fun story instead of all of the depressing blackpilling crap that we've had to deal with for the last month. And it's this GameStop subreddit, people on something called Wall Street Bets, which I didn't even know existed. And this is, right in your wheelhouse of America First populism, a revolt against the oligarchs, as it were. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very exciting day. And, it's one of these things where I've been saying this for the past couple of weeks because it's been kind of a depressing time. And obviously, a lot of bad stuff happening since the Capitol siege. But This is one of these black swan type events that nobody could predict, nobody could expect. But obviously, it's pretty destabilizing because this is something that is sending shockwaves throughout the market, and I don't know if it'll move the entire market so much. I think that's probably out of the question, but certainly it's causing a lot of problems for hedge fund managers, and it's definitely shaking up the way that the big Wall Street people think about the market and how they're moving within the market. So I was very excited about it. I'm loving it.
Yeah. So for those who are not, and I'm not, my husband is the one who's the financial guru in our household. Can you explain what exactly happened? And I pulled up, this is a little bit small, but you can just see, boom, right here, what happened to the stock. What exactly is it that these subredditors got together and did that has everybody on Wall Street and all the elites upset? Like, what happened? What exactly happened?
So they're targeting GameStop because GameStop is the most shorted stock in the market right now. And for people that don't have a very technical knowledge about finance, I myself am not really an expert, but I've been looking at it for the past couple of days. Basically, how it works is that GameStop has, I believe, 140% or 160% short interest, meaning that 140% of all the stocks from GameStop that are available to trade are being shorted right now, are being borrowed and sold by short sellers. And basically what it means to short a stock is it means that it's a bet that the stock is going to decrease in value. And so what the people on Reddit are doing is they're buying up the GameStop stock, even though GameStop it's not a great company. A lot of people on the subreddit Wall Street Bets, they thought it was a good value buy. They thought that it might be worth something. Probably not worth what it is right now. I don't know what the price is at the time the market closed, something like $360. I don't know if it's worth that, but initially they thought it was a good buy. And then they recognized that it was like I said, the most shorted stock on the market. And they realized that if they drove the price up, that all the short sellers would have to buy back the stock in order to complete their contract. And so it's kind of going from both sides then. They're driving up the price, and then the short sellers are having to buy back the stock, which then drives the stock price even further up. And because it's such a shorted stock, there's no shortage of people, no shortage of short sellers that are going to have to buy it back at a significant loss. And so now you've got these major hedge funds that are losing billions and billions of dollars and having to be bailed out because they're having to buy back GameStop stock at over $300 per share when it was trading at, I think, $2 per share back in April. So, if you imagine you've got billions of dollars invested, I don't know what the volume is, but it's 140%. That's the short interest. And they're having to sell at a loss of $300 in some cases, or $200. It's very costly. So I don't know if that's a perfect technical analysis, but that's sort of the gist of it. And basically, they're killing these Wall Street people and making a huge profit. They've been made into millionaires overnight because of this, because of options trading or just by buying the stocks. So it is really something. It's really amazing.
It is. And it's just so delicious. There are many delicious angles and aspects of it. And, the fact that it's GameStop and there's just something gamery about it that induces schadenfreude, joy at the pain of all of these oligarchs having to do this. But then there's the double standard, which, of course, we have to illuminate this, that for some reason it's okay for George Soros to bet against the pound. But now you have all of these anonymous, small trading, ordinary citizens that do the same thing. And here are all of the overlords of NASDAQ ready to shut it down because now ordinary people are doing what only the elites are allowed to do.
Oh, exactly. And that's it's interesting because on the one hand, it's obviously a financial play and the chief motivation is profit. This is a Wall Street subreddit. And presumably the people that are involved in this are investors, prospective investors, a lot of young guys. And these are not institutional investors either. These are retail investors. These are young guys, college kids, whatever, in some cases, just amateurs. And so they're putting money into this to make money. But at the same time that they're trying to make profit, there's also this political narrative going on as well, where while they're making the case that if you buy this stock, it has to appreciate because the short sellers have to buy it. At the same time, they're also saying buy in because we're sticking it to the man. Buy in because we're profiting, and we're profiting from the losses of Wall Street. We are sticking it to them. We are hurting them. We are causing them to go bankrupt. We're killing these people figuratively, of course, financially. We have to stress that,
yes.
Right? And you're exactly right. They've pulled out all the stops today to basically prevent people from making money off of this. This has become the biggest story in the world right now, #1 trending on Twitter. And they're talking about doing this to other stocks too, not just GameStop, but all the other stocks where there's a high ratio of people short selling the stock, like AMC Theater and Bed Bath & Beyond. And go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Yeah. I just said AMC, which is, you tweeted about, right? Mm-hmm.
Right. And so they're going after all these other stocks. And what started this morning is that now all the financial institutions are trying to prevent this from happening. On the AMC stock, which, full disclosure, I'm invested in AMC, they had to halt the trading of the AMC stock twice within 10 minutes of the market opening to prevent people from investing. And then TD Ameritrade said that they were not going to allow people to buy GameStop and AMC stock on their platform. And curiously, Robinhood and many other apps were down this morning, preventing people from fulfilling their orders, buying stock from AMC or GameStop. And now, and like you said, NASDAQ came out and said that they want to shut down, from on the level of the exchange, not just the brokerage, online brokerage firms, but the exchange. They said that the exchanges should shut down the trading of GameStop and AMC and some of these other ones, these over-levered stocks, so that investors can recalibrate their positions in light of this. In other words, so they don't lose any money and we can't make any money. And it's that double standard that the only people that are allowed to get ahead in this country are the elites, the oligarchs, the people that are in the institutions, and all of us, we're supposed to just invest our meager paychecks into S&P 500 and Roth IRA and 8% annualized return. And like you said, in the billions and the millions, that's reserved for Soros and people like that.
Yeah, that's right. Why don't you just shut up and wait for your Social Security check to pour in, right?
That's right.
So how many hours do you give the Wall Street Bets subreddit before it's killed off?
Oh, I don't know. It's definitely, it's in terms of hours, probably not days or weeks. I think they said that I forget which, but they said one agency is already subpoenaing people that are involved in this Reddit. And, God only knows what the SEC is going to do in the coming days and weeks, because it's so ridiculous. Like you said, these institutional people, they can make moves all day long. And when we do it, not only does it get shut down immediately, but I think the next phase is going to be, of course, censorship. They're going to strike at the head and scatter everybody on Reddit. And then the next thing that they're going to do is they're going to bring down the weight of the law on everybody involved in this, and they'll dig up whatever regulation or rule that they need to intimidate people into never trying anything like this again.
Yeah. By the way, just as a side note, there's been some of these interviews on the financial networks, cable networks, with some of the managers of these funds, and they're saying, "Oh, we got it covered," and and everyone in the subreddit is calling bullshit. They're just they're waiting to hopefully drive the stock price back down and buy themselves time. The chaos, right? Right. I pulled up your Twitter feed here and zero in on this and get you to flesh it out. I loved this series of tweets here where you said, and now we're back in black pill territory. The elections are rigged. The stock market is rigged. The social media algorithms are rigged. They win, we lose. Anybody who tries to beat the system gets totally destroyed, made into an example of. Run for office to fix things. They bury you with mail-in ballots, of course, using COVID as a pretext. Build your own social media platform. They ban you from the App Store. Beat the hedge funds, and they shut down the market and get the SEC involved. You can't win in a rigged system.
Right. Well, it's true. And that's been the events of the past few months. It's kind of, in a lot of ways, there's, I think, a great relief to all of this, because somebody like yourself, you've been fighting this battle for a long time. And I've been fighting this battle for the past 4 years. And, maybe 4 years ago or a year ago, maybe people didn't know it was this bad. You've known it's bad. A lot of people have known it's bad for a long time, for 20, 30, even beyond 50 years, whatever. And there was always this illusion that, for example, we're in a democracy and you vote and we pick our leaders and they represent us when they make policy. And there's this illusion that we've got this free market, and you have the American dream where you work hard, you pay your taxes, play by the rules, and you get ahead. And we live in a country where we have freedom of the press. We're not like Russia or these other oppressive countries. We're a free and a truly open society. And what you find is in 2016, I think, began a real revolution, and not a revolution like a violent revolution, but what's baked into the system, which is a means through the law legally to change the course of the country. A revolution in a different kind of a sense, where we're going to take the country and reorient it and go in a different direction. Trump was elected, Brexit happened, lots of changes happened. And what's happened in the past 4 years is that the system has conspired to prevent that change, of course, from happening. And obviously now we're getting into the election, but you can kind of see it in every sector of society. Like with Donald Trump, he tried to reorient the direction of the government and the policy. Well, that gets thwarted from within the White House, from the Congress. It gets thwarted in the election. They just drown you in mail-in ballots. They fix the election. They rig it. They rig the whole process, and they get the president that they want. You try to get the message out on social media, try to win the war of information, which is what got Trump elected in the first place. Well, they'll just change the algorithm. We'll promote NBC and CBS, and we're going to take you out of the search and the recommended algorithm. And obviously everybody's banned and shadow banned. And then ultimately this, which is seemingly unrelated, but obviously thematically similar and analogous, is that in the stock market, try to get ahead, try to screw over these guys, because the economy's been leveled, it's been destroyed. The whole stock market's been rigged by supercomputers and all that kind of thing. And we figure out this hack, or not me, but obviously Reddit figures out this hack for how to get one over on the big guys. And what do? Shut down the market. You can't trade anymore. And your subreddit's banned. And now you're being subpoenaed. And I think people are finally realizing it's not an open society. It's not a democracy. There's nothing free about it. And what was in the place of this legitimacy that the government had based on consent of the governed and this participation of the people, now in its place is just hard power. Shut up, go away, and if push comes to shove, we'll just arrest you. And this is where we are.
Right, but Nick, China and the Uyghurs, the Uyghurs. And I have a lot of as you know, since I've been around for a while, a lot of boomers who are beginning to awaken to such matters. And so for us, when we say Uyghurs, it is a punchline. We don't need to explain it. Can you explain why, people who watch Fox News or they're watching Newsmax now of a certain generation, why they shouldn't be parroting this Con Inc. concern for Uyghurs in China?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a good point because there are a lot of people that are, they're good faith and earnest and they're into that kind of stuff. But I mean, ultimately, people just have to look around at the country. I mean, I hear this all the time on Fox News and Twitter and from like boomer type conservatives. They complain about everything except for the people that are the authors of all the problems in their lives. People are complaining about the Communist Chinese Party, and people complain about AOC and the socialists. And I look around at just the events of the past 2 weeks, and I'm thinking, who's responsible for prosecuting all these peaceful demonstrators at the Capitol? Is it the Communist Chinese Party, or is it the FBI and the DOJ? Who's responsible for the big tech censorship of Trump? Is it the Communist Chinese Party and the socialists, or is it big tech platforms in America that are the epitome of the private sector, the epitome? I mean, these are the biggest private companies in the history of the world, top 5 in the stock index and everything. And they're the ones that are responsible for the censorship. And then even this, it's the exchanges and it's the SEC and it's all these institutions. In a word, it's the American regime that's a problem, not the Chinese regime. We're so worried about Uyghurs and the suppressed Muslim minority in China, which is being put in re-education camps. And we're concerned about the abuses in China or the illiberalism in China. What about the illiberalism and the abuses and the tyranny and the oppression right here in our own country? And not just from the government or the so-called Democrats or socialists, but from a constellation of public and private entities that are all, they're all of the same ilk. They're all part of the same establishment that are making life worse for us, persecuting us on the basis of our religion, our race, our political views, and so on. Boomers got to wake up and say, there's something deeply wrong with the American regime. And we could figure that out. And then we could worry about Uyghurs. Then we could worry about Rohingya Muslims and Belarus and all of that.
Yeah. Well, I think that more and more of them are getting there. And this is important first because as a leader of America First, being able to illuminate for people the difference between the real authentic thing and the fake, phony, spam version of it is more important than ever, as in the post-Trump era, we have a co-opting of that. I mean, everybody says it reflexively now. And here's a small example. I meant to send this to you before I got on. Townhall.com, which dropped my column because I defended you and the America First kids and the Groypers last year, is now marketing their VIP paid service, because paying for their content is something that they're trying to persuade people to do. And the promo code is America First.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, and another of these figures, one that you've had fisticuffs with, not literally, Sebastian Gorka also, of course, had his show called America First. And when was it? Was it last year, notoriously, that he was calling for you to be deplatformed? And now he's in the news because why?
Banned from YouTube. His show was taken off. It's terrible. Oh, it's terrible. Well, and it's so true. There's sort of two things going on there with Sebastian Gorka. It's so perfect because, like you said, he calls his show America First. My show's called America First too. And last year during the Groyper War, it was very clear who was really America First, because we were out there questioning Con Inc., the recipients of lots of donor money from conservatives. Where's your conservative position on immigration? Where's your conservative position on social issues? Where's your conservative position on foreign policy? And they didn't have any answers to that. Charlie Kirk and Benny Johnson and Ben Shapiro, these kinds of people. And in response to this, there was this overt pressure campaign to smear me and you and everybody who was asking the questions. And of course, Sebastian Gorka was on the side of Con Inc. and the smear job and the people that are in favor of open borders and gay marriage and all that. And yeah, ultimately he wound up getting banned this week. It's something that we've been calling for a long time. We've been talking about censorship forever. And I've been talking about censorship ever since my show called America First started. And I always said for years, and I'm not the only one, I'm sure you said the same thing, is it's not going to end with you or I. It's not going to end with the people that you don't like, the so-called extremists or the so-called real racists or, offensive people, provocative people. Of course, there is no hard stop to the censorship regime, because who's in control of the censorship regime? Hardcore leftists, progressives. They see Charlie Kirk as Nazis. They see Turning Point USA as right-wing extremists. And Ben Shapiro, they think, is a fascist. It starts with people like you and I, and there's really no end in sight until they get to everybody, including John McCain, or I guess Cindy McCain at this point, and Liz Cheney and people like that, and everyone between them and the people that first got banned from Charlottesville or the alt-right or whatever. And, now conservatives are just finding that out. Donald Trump isn't safe. Sebastian Gorka is not safe. None of them are safe. So the censorship comes from everybody. And the lesson is pretty clear. Number one, we have to be all in it together, because no one's safe from this. And people can try to carve out their own little fiefdoms within the right and say, well, we're not going to talk to this one, or we don't want to associate with this one. We don't have that luxury anymore, because taken together, it's still an asymmetrical fight against the left, all of us combined. So we don't have the luxury of self-segregating and being real picky and gatekeeping and all of that like they do. And what's more is, it's time for people to be fighters and patriots and really be America first, because time is running out for everybody. There is an urgency. The writing is on the wall. It's 8 years until the Biden amnesty. It's probably 4 years until the electoral winter. Clearly, the clock is ticking, if it's not already run out, on all these important issues. And people are still sort of jockeying and posturing for, I don't know, like a luxury seat in the future gulag. I mean, that's ultimately what it is. So It's time for people to stick together and stand up for what you believe in, what you purport to believe in, America first. Do it, live it, be a real American patriot. Because, we don't have time for the grift anymore. We're all going to die anyway, right?
Yeah, that's right. We haven't got time for the grift. That should be a bumper sticker for sure. And, I just have very simple life principles. And one is, don't lie. Don't lie, and don't be a coward. All of these people over the years, as the rest of us have been sent out to pasture and deplatformed and demonized and whatnot. It's one thing if you just sort of sat on the sidelines. Okay, fine. But really to go out there, and put yourself out there as a smear merchant and a collaborator of our supposed real enemies on the left. That's the thing I have so much contempt for. And, this brings up, in the aftermath of the events of January 6th, as we call them, the witch hunt campaigns and the cowardice, the active cowardice that has been shown by a lot of people in throwing all of the protesters, whether they rammed through the windows or not, or whether they just, politely filed through and followed the banister markers and all that and took a couple of selfies. And you've been the target of some of these campaigns of lies. And I want to bring up this. It's your pinned tweet, and give you a chance to on this live stream, talk about what's happening and how hard it is to fight back. So walk us through this right here.
Sure. So, I went to the event on January 6th. It was a Trump rally, of course, on the Ellipse, and I saw the speech, and then I went over for the demonstration at the Capitol, and I remained outside the Capitol at all times. You know, I was on the lawn, and we demonstrated for a couple hours, and I left. And, you know, I don't think anybody anticipated it would turn into what it's now turned into, which is an insurrection, an attack on democracy, whatever. Nobody, I think, at the time realized the gravity or the seriousness, the severity of the situation. In any case, so I went back to my hotel after all that, and I flew back home to Chicago the following day, and I logged onto social media, and I saw that there were very prominent journalists, left-wing journalists, and even publications falsely claiming that I was inside the Capitol building. And not only that, but that I was inside the office of Nancy Pelosi. And they based it on this screenshot, which you could see in the top left there on the screen. They based it on the screenshot of an individual who was in the Baked Alaska live stream inside the Capitol. And what's interesting is this is obviously a video. It's being live streamed, and the quality is pretty low. And there was one journalist in particular, Nathan Bernard, who he must have watched this live stream or archived it or found it. And he saw this clip where this guy appears behind Baked Alaska, and he basically selected a frame from the video, which is so blurry and the resolution is so low that it completely obscures the face of the person. And, you know, I guess because it just looks like, I don't know, a white male, people can basically project onto that whatever they wanted to. And so Nathan Bernard, I think, was the most high profile case. He went out on Twitter, I think either on the 6th or the 7th, tweeted out that frame, a screenshot of that video, and said, "This is Nick Fuentes in Baked Alaska." Totally not true, you know, and I went through and I had to get the video from somebody else who archived it because it had been scrubbed from the internet. I had to find the timestamp myself, and I went in and I posted a couple of screenshots, other frames from the same video where the person's face is more clear. And it's very obvious once you look at the rest of the video that it's not me. I have different facial hair. I have different facial features, facial structure. The chin is different. The clothes are different. You know, I mean, I'm photographed outside the Capitol in a full suit, a tie, a long coat, and close to clean shaven. And this guy's photographed inside the Capitol at the same time with a jacket on and a vest and I don't know, it looks like maybe a quarter zip or something and a MAGA hat. And he's got like a full goatee and looks a little bit more ethnic than me, I would add. And so in any case, this tweet goes viral. It gets 40,000 likes from Nathan Bernard, falsely claiming I'm there. And it just, you know, it goes on exponentially. People claiming that I'm in there, retweets. It's now basically an established fact then, based on this lie on social media, that I was there. People calling for my arrest, people tagging the FBI, sending in tips and all of that. And so I got in touch with a lawyer. It's very costly to ask what my options are about defamation. And we put together a cease and desist letter, which we sent to the SPLC because they were going to write up an article about it. I signed a sworn affidavit saying I was not in the Capitol and I do not endorse political violence and all of this. And I sent in evidence that I wasn't in the Capitol and all of that. And, you know, so we went the route of cease and desist. We analyzed all the different false claims about me being in the Capitol. And ultimately, what we concluded is that really there's no case because, you know, for people that have never been through something like this, when it comes to defamation, you know, the obvious thing when I talked about this on my show, a lot of my fans said, well, Nick, just, you know, sue them for defamation. They lied about you being in the Capitol. It's demonstrably untrue. They're deliberately lying. What's more is it's obviously having a significant consequence because the law is getting involved and there's ramifications on social media. They say, well, you know, just sue them for defamation, sue them for libel, whatever. And, you know, you consult with the lawyer, and what any lawyer will tell you is that when it comes to defamation, if you're a public figure, it's impossible. When you're a public figure, you cannot win on defamation except for in extraordinary cases because the standard is so high. You've got to prove malice, a very different standard than if you're a private person. If you're a private person, you can prove negligence. If you're public, you have to prove malice, which means either a reckless disregard for the truth, or it means that they're deliberately and knowingly lying. And Not only that, it's a difficult standard to beat, but if you want to prove damages,
Yes.
which is the other thing,
Yep.
it's a very costly thing. And my lawyer told me this. He said, even if you win, which we could maybe win against a couple of these guys because it's so bad, even if you win, in order to prove damages, you have to prove that whatever loss you incurred as a result of this was a direct result of their lie itself. So for example, I got deplatformed for a number of things. Unless I'm able to cite in the decision from a big tech platform that takes me off that they used Nathan Bernard's video or they used, whatever, then I can't prove the damages. And so then I spend tens of thousands of dollars on winning a case and I win and it's a great thing. And I get awarded $1 in damages as like a symbolic victory. And I'm just out the money. So there's no recourse. There's really nothing you could do. And that's just how it is at this point. We're just living under the thumb of the empire. The laws are against us. Law enforcement is against us. The media is against us. All the institutions with all their institutional power are arrayed against us. And we've just got basically no recourse. We just got to dodge the bullets now.
Yeah, and we just got to sit back and take a lot of this stuff. And I know how frustrating it is because over so many years, I mean, I've got a folder of all the lies, and then I've got all of the emails with lawyers telling me, yeah, there's nothing you can do about that. And just, I said I didn't like liars and I didn't like cowards. And there are so many of them, an entire gallery of, just a coward palooza of these people who get away with it. And there's never any consequences. And so it keeps happening again. And, this is actually something that was on President Trump's radar screen. He had talked over the course of his administration about the need to reform our libel laws. And, in England, it's much better for public figures who are slimed. I think one of the sort of deleterious effects of the Linwood Nick Sandmann victory is that after that, incredible win, I think most ordinary people think, oh, well, it's easy, right? It's easy to defeat CNN and the Washington Post. And just as a side note on that, of course, Nick Sandmann so grateful to Linwood that he fired him this week. And that's another thing that I just, again, I have very simple principles and being loyal, to your friends is definitely a big one. And what a disappointment that kid is. Any thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. And Nicholas Sandmann, it's been like that for a while, because I had recently followed him after the election or whatever. And I just saw everything he posted was terrible. And, here's a guy who, out of everybody in the country, who would understand what we're up against, understand the nature of the enemy and the gravity of all of this. Even somebody who may have not understood it, but then should have understood it after what he went through. If there was anybody in the country who should have been red-pilled by life or red-pilled by experience, it should have been him, because he, of course, famously, this Native American or American Indian activist comes up, bangs a drum in his face, and Nicholas Sandmann gets thrown under the bus, not just by the mainstream media, they lie and they mischaracterize the event, but even the conservatives, Ben Shapiro and congressmen and, all your favorite conservative influencers, they're the first ones to jump out and disavow this guy and say, oh, he's despicable, he's a white supremacist, all this. Now it comes out that none of this is true. It's a mischaracterization. And then all the conservatives come over and, now they want to have him on the show and they groom him into the Mitch McConnell campaign and all this. And, this guy who should have understood not just the lying nature of the media, the corruption, that our left-wing enemies hate us. I'm sure he got doxxed and harassed and death threats and all that. But even understanding that the right wing is in on it too. The conservatives are in on the grift and they'll sell you down the tubes just as easily. And he turns on a dime, and within a year, he's working for Mitch McConnell, fires Linwood. He's against Trump. He's this outspoken critic and everything. And it's just such a disappointment, because you got to imagine if this guy doesn't get it, this guy who's so young and subject to, he was in the national spotlight for a not insignificant amount of time, and really such a short period of time getting a course on how things work in this country politically. If he can't get it, how are you going to expect anybody else to get it? Your average consumer, your average media consumer, Fox News enjoyer. How can you expect all these people to understand what we're up against? So that was a huge disappointment. And, like you said, it just comes down to those simple things: courage, loyalty, honesty. We're not asking much from people. We're just asking them to, just be loyal to the people that help them, tell the truth, and have a little bit of courage. And that's the big catastrophe, is when it comes to this persecution of the Capitol rioters, or whatever you want to call it. I think that you would have a real chance at not being crushed right now if all conservatives would stand shoulder to shoulder and show a little bit of solidarity, a little bit of courage, a little bit of loyalty, a little bit of honesty. But the only reason they're getting one over on us right now and they're winning is because that's not happening. The number of patriots that are willing to take a stand is far too small compared to the patriots that are kind of willing to just go along with this or be complicit in it or actively facilitate it. That's a sad thing.
It is a sad thing. Last thing I'll say about Nick Sandmann is there was a time in my life where I would excuse his cowardice by citing his age. And I'd say, well, he's young, he hasn't lived much life, and, he should be given more leeway. That was before I knew you existed and the AF movement existed, and of course all the kids who showed up on those college campuses. And it really is, sort of a cultural and political and ideological milestone for me, because it opened my eyes to the fact that there are legions in your generation that do get it. And so Nick Sandmann does not have an excuse. And that brings me to, again, knowing that we've got, several thousand people here are tuning in from the Facebook audience. Even now, a lot of them don't understand. And I see this because they're all gravitating to Telegram, and I opened up my comments. What is Groyper? What is a Groyper? So I'm going to play this Rudy Giuliani video, and I want you to be able to react to this as well. Let's see. Let me bring it up right now. Here we go.
Riot was set up by Antifa, by another group called Groyper, which is a right-wing group, but a right-wing group that has a gripe with Trump because he's pro-Israel. They happen to be a bunch of sick anti-Semites.
Yeah, they're the fringe right, crazy, radical ones that are they don't belong with MAGA country and Trump supporters.
All right, shut up. So, a lot of sliming going on, defamation of Groypers, and now, disappointingly, but not shockingly, somebody whispered in Rudy Giuliani's ear that he should lump together Antifa and Groypers. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, for people that are unfamiliar, the Groypers are young people. It's kind of a slang term for followers of mine. It's really just an internet meme, but we took on this label a year ago when we did this insurgency against Turning Point USA. And, for lack of a better word, the Groypers are young, Trump-supporting Christian conservatives. We're against immigration, against foreign wars. We're against globalism. We're Christian American nationalists, is I guess what you could call it, is a shorthand for it. And I'm basically the leader of the Groypers. I'm the leader of the Groypers. I'm the leader of these young Christian American nationalist types. And, we are totally in support of Trump. We all voted for Trump. We have rallied for Trump. We were basically the only people bringing a presence to stop the steal protests for the past couple of months. It was the Groypers and InfoWars that took over the capitals in Phoenix and Harrisburg and Atlanta in the Million MAGA March. And when I say took over, I mean in a peaceful and legal demonstration sense, right? We were the ones that were going out there in support of Trump against the election fraud most recently. And we went to the Trump rally on the 6th. We demonstrated around the Capitol, not inside, but peacefully around the Capitol. And like you said, somebody got in Rudy Giuliani's ear, and apparently Raheem Kassam and maybe Steve Bannon too, because they reiterated the same thing on their show.
Right.
And they said that, it was the Groypers that instigated the Capitol riots. And, not only is it just very funny to see Rudy Giuliani say that, it reminds me of all these other boomers trying to interact with the internet language. They say things like the hacker known as 4chan or that group incel, like it's an acronym. And then they say that the group Groyper, it's like, that's not really what it is, but it doesn't really work like that. But in any case, we're the base. We're the epitome of everything that these people should love. And it's so amazing to see this, Rudy Giuliani, who just got done And he was doing a bang-up job. He was really the only one defending Trump because Lin Wood was ridiculous and Sidney Powell got to be ridiculous. I mean, they both kind of went off the rails. And the Trump legal team gave up, on the White House and on the campaign. So it was Rudy Giuliani fighting this battle for the past couple of months against the election fraud. And it was the Groypers plus like InfoWars, and I know you were there and a few other people. We were the ones that were out there, around the state capitals protesting this and everything. And then he gets up there because some, I don't know who, but somebody gets in and says, oh, these are bad guys. You got to disavow. And what's even more despicable to me is maybe not even Rudy Giuliani, because, I mean, he's got so much going on. I guess he could be forgiven if he got told some bad information or something. He's got responsibility, but I mean, you could understand where a mistake might be made. What's more despicable to me is that anchor on OAN. Yeah, they're extremists. Yeah, they're the fringe of the fringe. They're the most. It's like, we're the people we're Trump's base. We're the ones that were against the immigration and against the foreign wars and against the free trade and the cultural attack on American identity. I mean, we've gotten to the point now where it's like, if you're a real American patriot, if you're a conservative, you just don't have a home in this country anymore. I mean, nobody represents you. The television networks don't represent you. The politicians don't represent you. They're going to try and get on television and say, hey, if you don't want mass immigration, if you want Christian social values, if you want to have sovereignty over your country, if you want to protect American heritage and identity, like the Groypers, well, you're the most extreme. We disavow. You're really out there. I mean, what does OAN and the Republican Party represent now? I mean, think about it. It's they want to be the real feminists, and Democrats are the real racists. We're the ones that want to pass the Platinum Plan, and we're the ones that are really in favor of BLM. BLM, that they don't really think that Black Lives Matter. We're the real BLM because we want opportunity zones, and we want to, have Candace Owens and Brexit conferences and all that. And, we're the real defenders of gay people because we have Rick Grinnell. And it's like, what have we become? So in some ways, the Rudy Giuliani thing it's obviously a smear and it's not true, and it's insulting because we're the ones helping these guys. And we're the true believers, the true foot soldiers getting thrown under the bus. But then we get branded as extremists. It's like, hey, if I'm an extremist, then what's supposed to be the mainstream of the party? It's like where the left was 10 years ago.
Right.
So,
right. And I want to address this as well, because this has come up in my Telegram comments, and I see a couple of comments here, because the word and the adjective anti-Semitic always comes up. And this goes back to what we discussed before and what I've been hammering to people as I've brought them along. Either you really are America first or you're not. And if you're going to put Saudi Arabia or China or Mexico or Israel above our country, you are not America first. And if you point this out, it doesn't make you anti-Semitic. So I want you to address this. And I want to bring up Madison Cawthorn, right? Because he had been the great white hope, as it were, right? The future of the Republican Party. And he's out there, saying that the future of the Republican Party is to bring it back to the corpse of Ronald Reagan, right? The future. And there was a very trenchant observation from somebody who had looked at his campaign site when he was still running, where he had more written about Israel than he did about America and what he was going to do about securing our borders and putting an America first immigration policy in place. And that's what we're talking about. And I just want people who are watching this from the Facebook and YouTube audiences, more the Facebook than the YouTube audience, do not get into this sort of knee-jerk panic when somebody invokes anti-Semitic, if you do not understand what exactly it is they are defining as anti-Semitic. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, that's a great setup. And the Madison Cawthorn thing is so pertinent because I think that exemplifies the issue. Here's a guy who everybody loves, Madison Cawthorn. He defeated his primary opponent, who was endorsed by Donald Trump. And it's a big upset, and he's a young guy, and it's an interesting story because he's in the wheelchair and all that. He's obviously very good looking and well-spoken, and everybody's already attributing to him earlier in 2020 when he won the primary that this is going to be our AOC. This is going to be our answer to the Justice Democrats or the progressive left, whatever. He's got this big spotlight on him and high expectations. And like you said, you go on his policy website, and the section on Israel is bigger than not just immigration, but every other issue, literally every other issue. He's got one paragraph on immigration. He's got one paragraph on abortion, one paragraph. And then you open up the Israel section and it takes up, this is not an exaggeration, the entire webpage, like 8 paragraphs. And look, maybe people support Israel, maybe they don't. It kind of doesn't matter. If you're in the party of Make America Great Again and America First, something is out of place here. Something is very wrong here. Now, you could say that you support a country or whatever, but that should take, obviously, a backseat, and that should be secondary to domestic policy. It should be secondary or even tertiary to everything else that is America related. Immigration is a pressing issue. Big tech, the COVID lockdown, all of this is a far more pressing priority, far more urgent than our support for a foreign nation. And that's exactly right. It's the double standard, because if you were to say this about any other country, many people would be okay with this. If Joe Biden had a section on China on his website that was longer than any other section, people would say, oh, that's Beijing Biden, that's China Joe, whatever. If he had that for a country like Iran or Palestine or Russia, I mean, literally any other country, that would be the reaction. It would be America first. What's going on with this guy? But when it comes to Israel, it seems like there's an exception. I don't make exceptions for America first. I'm America first across the board. I'll also add, there's this pejorative of anti-Semitic, and this is how it goes. I critique something like this, and well, what's the response? Oh, you're anti-Semitic. If I say I want to put America first, even before Israel, along with every other country, but I want to put America first in front of every country, well, then you get called anti-Semitic. And it's interesting because conservatives kind of understand this game with all the other isms, all those other pejoratives. If I say I oppose Black Lives Matter and I get called a racist, conservatives will say, oh, well, we know how that works. You oppose BLM, you oppose a very partisan, charged agenda, and they call you something because they can't win the argument. We get that. If I say I'm against the Chinese infiltration of America when they're buying up land and they're bribing the politicians, they've got honeypots like Fang Fang and all of that. If I say I'm against that, am I anti-Chinese? Am I a xenophobe or something? Of course not. If I say I am against radical Islamic terrorism and the left calls me an Islamophobe, is that legit? Of course, we know that's ridiculous. But I say that I want to put America first before Israel, people call me anti-Semitic. And conservatives who understand this when it comes to everything else, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, whatever, they say, oh, well, that's valid. That's totally legit. People really got to search their feelings and kind of understand what's going on here. There's a clear double standard. And my only conviction is America first. And we don't have time for political correctness. We don't have time to play these word games. And we definitely shouldn't be listening to these isms, even if they're compelling to certain conservatives,
Yes. Again, I think that there's a small white pill here in that more people are opening their eyes, they're noticing, and they're less afraid to talk about it than they used to be. And I think that last month, all of the mainstream conservative outrage about the COVID aid bill and the government funding bills, people started to notice that Con Inc. would rail about the billions that were spent on Pakistani gender studies, all the money that was sent to Latin America, and then curiously, in the list of all the outrages, they wouldn't, when I say they, the Con Inc. type people who, set all the narratives and do all the conditioning of rank and file conservatives, curiously omitted, the $500 million in military aid to Israel and all the money that I think there was several million spent on border security for Israel, but not for us. Not to mention the $4 billion in foreign aid. And of course, if you mention that at a TPUSA conference, as many Groypers did last year, again, that would immediately brand you anti-Semitic. So I think going forward for the America First movement, sort of what would you call it? Destigmatizing or demagnetizing, this particular area. I think it's working.
I agree. I agree because anybody who says America first can recognize the incongruity in these positions. Anybody who is truly America first can recognize that it does have to be all foreign aid that has to go. It does have to be all foreign entanglements and all of these commitments, which are excessive and enduring. I mean, if we have to put America first when it comes to Sudan and the Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Palestine, we got to put America first when it comes to NATO, Japan, and yes, even Israel. So I think people can understand because it's such a simple principle. We're just taking America first and we're applying it uniformly without discrimination, without prejudice or anything like that. In fact, it's the opposite. We're applying it completely without prejudice. It'd be prejudice to say, well, we have to have one exception,
Yeah. There's one more area that I want to cover with regard to this, and that is, and I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it yet, but it really gets under my skin because a lot of people who are pro free speech are also pro the BDS laws and outlawing this. I mean, it's in, I think, almost all 50 states. It's been adopted at the federal level and shepherded through, I think, by executive order by President Trump. Ron DeSantis, who is often spoken of as a candidate for 24 and often spoken of as an America First candidate, made a big deal about it, signed their anti-BDS law in both countries. And so, I wanted to get, from you your thoughts about that and whether it's going to, I mean, I guess that horse is out of the barn. I mean, I guess there's no way to repeal these kind of things, but it's sort of untenable being pro free speech and for these anti-BDS laws. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. And, it's difficult because, like with the Capitol riots and this, it's really laying bare a lot of the hypocrisy in the messaging because conservatives like to think of themselves as these real patriots and freedom loving and come and take it and all this kind of stuff. And then when the rubber meets the road, you'd be, well, I don't know if you'd be surprised, but you'll find that a lot of these conservatives, how many of them do they really mean that? I love America. That's why I want to put America first. This is my home. This is home of my ancestors. I love everything about America. I love Americans. And I also think that it is just basically a self-evident principle that a government should put the interests of its people and its nation first. And where are all these conservatives that they've got to bend over backwards to say, oh, well, not in this case or not in that case? And with this BDS laws on the college campuses where they basically outlaw anything that is pro-BDS, it's a total abridgment of the First Amendment. If you go out and advocate or agitate for BDS on the college campus, it's now a crime. If you're a federal contractor, if you work for the government in some sense in a lot of states, they won't hire you if you are pro-BDS. And conservatives are in favor of these laws because, well, they benefit Israel or they benefit a cause that they like. And it's like, why do we have to compromise? Why do we have to compromise ourselves, our integrity, our principles? This is America. It should be total free speech in every case. This is America. It should be America first in every case. We should put our interests and our people first, always, everywhere, with any country. And it's just such a disheartening thing that you've got conservatives that they salute the flag and it's all this flag waving kind of stuff and love America and salute the troops and all this kind of stuff. And like I said, but then when it comes to the rubber meeting the road, the actual issues, the actual sort of tough gray areas that call for a principled moral stand with integrity, you've got people that are trying to find excuses and rationalizations and all this. It's just unacceptable. We have to stop making compromises. It's got to be America first. And, I understand Ron DeSantis and Trump and some of these other politicians. It's politics, it's pragmatic. But when are the people going to come together and create an electorate, create a polity that says we will not elect anybody that doesn't put America first? Those things should be like poison to Republican politicians, but instead they go out and champion them at campaign rallies. So unless and until the American people say, no, I don't want to elect somebody that doesn't put America first in every instance, politicians will keep giving us this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, last topic. We have about 5 minutes left. And, we've talked about big tech censorship. We've got all of the free market conservatives, the smug ones who've always said, build your own platform. And then, of course, we saw what happened with, the few successful alternate alternatives that had, the removed from the App Store, as you mentioned in your tweet. Well, you have built your own, and you went live, I guess last week was the first week, at americafirst.live. Tell us about what's going on and how people can watch you.
Yes. So in the aftermath of the Capitol riots, I got banned from the streaming platform that I was on. I used to stream my show on YouTube. I was banned from that last February. And since then, I had been using an alternative streaming platform called DLive, and they kicked me off less than a week after the siege on the Capitol. Excuse me. So yes, I did build my own platform. I'm out of options. I'm off of Twitch. I'm off of YouTube. I'm off of DLive and things you've never even heard of. So I had to build my own streaming platform. It's called americafirst.live. And we are working on it in order to make it so that it is an equivalent to all the other platforms, all the features. We got caught a little bit off guard, so we're still developing it. It's still sort of in a prototype or a beta type phase. But the website is americafirst.live. I stream my show there every weeknight at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. It's a very costly endeavor. It's very complicated. And we are really being put to task here because it's on both ends. You've got censorship from the big tech platforms and the back-end services. We've got to come up with censorship-proof alternatives to domain registrars, payment processors, web hosting, you name it. And then at the same time, you've got the journalist inquisitors who are just rifling through the website, looking for anything they can find, vulnerabilities to take the website down through hacking, or looking for the different services that we use and calling them up and doing campaigns to try to get us banned from the things we're not already banned from. So it's a very, very difficult task, but it's something that now I think everybody is involved in because everybody's getting deplatformed. So that's where I am. That's where the show is. And, I'm going to keep doing the show until they make it on a technological level impossible for me to do it anymore. So we'll be around as long as the free internet is around.
Yeah, that's right. You just got to keep throwing up those barriers and like the Marines, right? Improvise, adapt, overcome.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was so awesome. I'm so glad I got to catch up with you and introduce you to a new audience. And hopefully more of them will gravitate towards Telegram. You're still tweeting, though, on Twitter at Nick J. Fuentes, correct?
Yes.
And people can get you on Telegram at the same, right? Nick J. Fuentes.
Yes, exactly right.
Awesome. We'll catch up with you soon. Take care. Stay safe.
All right. Thank you so much. Talk soon.
Bye-bye.